Hello, I'm John Felt. Welcome to the Ncga FMC Ag Weather Outlook, August 22nd, 2015. Well, not a week goes by that there's not some precipitation this growing season. It might be light, it might be heavy, but it certainly has not been a season of prolonged heat and dry conditions or drought. And we got quite a bit of rain in northwest part of Iowa and the southwest part of Minnesota and some surrounding states as well. But look at how widespread that heavy rain was in northwest Iowa. That red is estimates of 5 inches, so very heavy rain over a part of the northwest part of Iowa. Now, as we went east, it became a lot more scattered. There was still some pockets of precipitation, but generally speaking, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio continued that trend of below normal precipitation. So when we look at the percent of normal over the last 7 days, we see well above normal precipitation in South Dakota, parts of Iowa, and then sort of a mix over the eastern Corn Belt, still drying out over Indiana and Ohio for the most part, sort of a mix of above normal and below normal in Illinois. Fortunately, an area that's been hit in the past with some very heavy rain remained dry, the southeast part of Iowa, northwest or northeast Missouri. Now, you might remember as I've gone through the growing season, remember about a month or so ago, I sort of expected the precipitation, which has been really heavy over the eastern Corn Belt, to gradually drift in this area. And that's what we're seeing now, that the core of the heaviest rain has shifted from the eastern Corn Belt to now the central and to the west. So the question is going to be, will that continue as we look forward? So as far as the anomalies of precipitation, the departure over the last 7 days, the area that really stands out again is that northwest part of Iowa, and that's 4 or 5 inches above normal for the week. Everywhere else, either where rain fell or it didn't, the anomalies were fairly close to normal, either a little bit above or a little bit below. So really what stands out is that area there in purple, and that's a lot of rain in 1 week. So when we look at soil moisture, we see it reflecting that heavy rain. We sort of have an axis here right through this region right here where we have still quite wet soils. We're continuing to dry soils for the most part over the eastern Corn Belt. This was much more extensive about 3 to 4 weeks ago. We continue to see soil moisture generally beginning to settle back into a normal range over those areas. Now let's keep an eye on the tropics as well. Nothing at all this week, or probably next week either, but it is beginning to get a little bit more active. There are a number of waves coming off the African coast. This is Hurricane Danny. You can see by Thursday it's still off in the Caribbean, so it's ways out there. Let's keep an eye on it, see if some of that moisture eventually works its way up into the Midwest, but right now just sort of a monitoring mode. Now, I think what's been very interesting here is how the jet stream has continued to be quite amplified all the way into August now, late August, and even going into September. The jet stream has this dip in it over the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley. As you know, that means cooler weather has been pushing south, and then the hot weather has been off to the west. So this week it looks like another cool week with that dip in the jet stream. Most of the Corn Belt below normal temperatures, most significant there right in the central part of the state with that area in blue. And if we look at temperatures as of late this week on Thursday, look at high temperatures here. 60s, 70s over almost all the entire Corn Belt, 60s and 70s and a few 80s as we get into the far western part of the state. So August is really shaping up here as an unusually cool month as we round out the growing season, especially over the Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt. Now, if we get into September, early September, more of a normal pattern here. It looks like not as much activity, but we still see temperatures. This is probably fairly close to normal. I don't see necessarily the extreme cool, and I definitely don't see the hot weather. So as we go through this dip of the very cold or cooler weather this week, it looks like the overall pleasant temperatures will continue right through the end of the month, but not so much an anomaly as we're seeing this week. Now, precipitation this week, it looks pretty scattered. A few pockets of heavy rain here and there, especially over the central part of the Corn Belt. Eastern sections, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, remain fairly quiet. There will be some precipitation, but scattered and not all that heavy. But then the central part, a few pockets of heavy rain, hit or miss, but overall fairly quiet. Thus, it looks like soils would continue to dry out across the eastern Corn Belt from Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. A few pockets here. If you happen to be where this heavy rain falls, soils will be getting wetter, but overall, if you look at the entire region, much more areas drying out than getting wet soils. Okay, so let's go through the anomaly or the rainfall precipitation departures. And I know we're getting closer and closer to harvest. So as we get further out in these models, you can sort of look at that, and let's look at these trends very carefully as we go forward. So here's week 1. We've talked about that. Let's go right to week 2. Week 2 looks to be fairly quiet, especially, again, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. Perhaps still some enhanced precipitation in the upper Midwest. Green is above normal, yellow is below normal. Southeast U.S. looks very quiet. Week 3 and week 4. Basically, computer models are saying there's not a lot of change with relatively below normal precipitation from the central to eastern Corn Belt and a bit above normal precipitation over the central to western Corn Belt. And that looks fairly stable type pattern as we go forward. So your takeaway points, most significant anomaly this week is going to be temperatures, below normal temperatures, especially the eastern Corn Belt. Pockets of heavy rainfall, but they should be spotty in coverage. And that trend of below normal rainfall over the eastern Corn Belt looks like it's going to continue, not just this week, but the next couple weeks. Now, next week, there probably will not be a briefing. I'm not going to have access to the internet, but if I can squeeze one in or find a way to do it, I'll do it. But there might not be one next week. If not, I'll be talking to you again the following week. Take care.